Today we're here with Christine Barbacki with ZenAway Vacation Rentals, and she's going to tell us all about how she helps owners in Whistler take care of their properties and get them rented out for maximum profits. So take it away, Christine.
It's so nice to be here with you, Dean. Thank you for having me. And yeah, ZenAway was born out of my love for real estate and my love for Whistler. We love working with owners who own assets here to help them generate wealth. And we love hosting guests in Whistler and showing off everything that we have to offer. Started this from my love of real estate as a vehicle to generate wealth, and from owning my own property. And so I'm so excited to share my knowledge with other real estate owners.
Now, what property did you get started with just yourself?
So in 2017, my fiance at the time and I purchased a 1.5 bedroom in Marketplace Lodge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Airbnb was still, we were quite ahead of the curve. Airbnb was still making headway in Whistler, and it was an excellent investment. And when we shared what the revenues we were generating with other realtors and our accountant, they were stunned at the revenues we were generating, and I saw an opportunity there to offer something better to other homeowners in Whistler. So slowly got the courage to start offering this to other people. Yeah. And sure enough, we've done really, really well for other homeowners. And it's really fun to come to the table being a homeowner myself, because I have both perspectives. And every decision that we make affects myself personally the same way it affects our owners. So it's really cool to be able to have that experience and that perspective.
Now, you guys have got a lot of competition out here in Whistler.
Yeah.
There's a ton of rental management companies, some good, some great, some not amazing, which we've all experienced. What sort of distinguishes you guys from the competition out there?
Yeah, and that's totally true. And I knew that coming into this. Here's the thing, it's a large pie, and I think that not everyone offers the same type of service, and we're going to be a good fit for some and we're not going to be a good fit for others. Yeah. So I think it's important to have diversity in the market. You're absolutely right. There are some excellent, other property managers, and there are some that I think, are getting a little stale and need to refresh their offering. But what distinguishes us, I think that first thing I just mentioned is that I'm a homeowner myself and an investor myself. Yeah. So when I'm speaking to owners, I can totally offer the perspective. I am in their shoes. I know how it works with taxes. I know all the other side of the home ownership aspect, yeah, as well as using real estate as a vehicle to generate wealth. It's super fun, as well as, we really care. We're local, we're a small business, and we're still in that boutique kind of zone, yeah, where it's everybody
a bit of a sweet spot.
Totally. Yeah. I'm obsessed with systems as well, so being a perfectionist is very, very important.
A fan of the spreadsheet.
Oh, total data nerd. Love looking at the data and just getting the most bang for a buck from a property, but also being able to care for this asset. Yeah. It's not just about using and abusing these properties. It's about really conserving their beauty and managing them as if they were our own, and making sure that the asset itself is preserved while we're drawing out profits.
Yeah. And I think it's important to make a distinction too, that we're talking about nightly rentals versus monthly rentals. Mm-hmm. Okay, and there are definitely rental management companies here that are gonna help you with your monthly rental situation. But here we're mostly talking about nightly rentals. We're talking about things at Blackcomb Benchlands, in the Village, perhaps down at Whistler Creekside, where nightly rentals are allowed and those phase one properties are allowed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very important distinction, because we will not rent a home that isn't zoned for nightly rentals. And we've had inquiries for that, but I think it's really, Whistler is in a housing crisis. We won't rent something that is zoned for residential. It's really important to keep those properties for their intended use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So maybe just tell us a little bit about what types of properties you specialize in. Is it 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms? Do you go for the bigger stuff? What's your sweet spot?
Our sweet spot is properties and owners that are high quality, that will be a great experience for a guest, whether that's a 1-bedroom home in the Village or a 5-bedroom home in Nicholas North.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. You know, when I speak to, my owners in Whistler who are thinking about renting their property or considering someone to help them with the rentals, I always encourage them to be as engaged as they can be in the process.
Yeah.
So tell us how that, fits into it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because as we have spoken about before, a lot of homeowners they're really busy and they just want someone to take over and not be involved at all, which is, in some sense, absolutely what we do. We are there to, help you generate as much as you can from an asset and take the headache away. But at the same time, it is really beneficial when an owner is involved and has input, and that's where the fit that I was talking about comes in.
Yeah.
Onboarding requires a lot of owner involvement, and sometimes it can be very exhausting and tiring, but then you get a major reward at the end. So it's a little bit of a, it's a collaboration, a lot of work on both sides at the beginning, but it totally pays off at the end. It's extremely rewarding for everyone.
Yeah. Well, the nightly rental game is really predicated upon you being really engaged through the process as a seller, or sorry, not as a seller, but as an owner. But you've probably been on Airbnb or something before. You looked at rentals in Maui or something, and you've seen something that's been renovated. It looks amazing. You're going to jump all over that, and you're going to pay top dollar for it. Mm-hmm. But if you own a property in Whistler and you plan to rent it out, and I always use this analogy where maybe you're from down in the city and you live in Richmond and you put your old furniture from your Richmond house in your property in Whistler and you left the walls painted burgundy and you expect top dollar. It's not going to happen.
A little bit contradictory for sure. And, when it comes to short-term rentals, you get out what you put in. Absolutely. You can totally do what you've just described. And some owners do, but...
And you'll probably do okay.
Yeah, and your revenues will reflect what you put in. Yeah. So if you're looking for top dollar, if you're looking for an asset that's really going to, at least in part cover some of the expenses, and you're looking to rent your home for top of the market, then it comes with, you have to offer a top of the market home. And I always say to my owners, would you rent this place for X dollars per night, what you're looking for? And with our coaching and our expertise and our experience, we help our homeowners extract, put in what is valuable into a home, yeah, and what will drive that average daily rate up, yeah, and what will drive the occupancy up, and what will really have an impact on that top line.
Yeah. Well, and then you and I talked about this a little bit before, but what are some of those touches that someone can do to a property or you can help them with that are going to kind of bring it in line with what consumers are expecting today, especially with maybe working at home and things like that on a vacation?
Mm-hmm. And we did talk about that, and the landscape is changing a little bit, or has changed a little bit post-pandemic. Obviously, a lot more people are traveling and working from home. I mean, this is not big news, but some of the considerations from that are obviously, number one is high-speed Wi-Fi. Don't forget about getting, the basic package. It's just not going to be helpful. Yeah. And by the way, side note, why do we want these guests? Well, number one, if they're working from home and they can afford to pay top dollar and they can work from home, they're going to be booking far out in advance. They're going to be booking a large chunk of your calendar, and they're going to be paying the top rate for the place that they actually want. They're not going to book last minute, and they're not going to be able to find a long period of time where it's available. Yeah. And they'll generally take really good care of your home. So you definitely want to cater to those type of guests. Yeah. They're very clean. They're not going to throw parties, et cetera, et cetera. So high-speed Wi-Fi, a separate workspace, offering even if just a little desk, yeah, or a couple, depending on the
not the kitchen
size.
Table, but something else.
Exactly. because, you know, the other day I went to help a guest who was staying in one of our properties, and they had 6 screens. They're a couple, and they had 6 screens. They're consultants to CFOs for multi-million-dollar companies in the US. They travel and they work. That's what they do. And they stayed with us for 2 weeks, and they had 6 screens on the dining room table.
Yeah.
They have nowhere to eat,
Yeah.
and they have to move their stuff every time. So next time we're going to outfit them with a larger home that has, you know, a totally separate workstation for them.
Yeah.
So that's not something that's necessarily obvious. The second thing that's not necessarily obvious for these longer term, you know, work from home guests is plenty of storage. If I'm
true.
staying for 2 months, I need to have room for my clothes, for my toys,
Yeah.
for my bike, maybe my skis, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
You don't want to be stumbling over your luggage in the bedroom.
Exactly.
And, you want to put all that stuff away.
exactly. And that's not necessarily super obvious, because many times I bring this up with owners like, well, what do we need tons of storage for if it's a weekend getaway?
Yeah.
Well, you're not necessarily going, that's not our target market anymore. Not that we'll welcome them with open arms,
Yeah.
but we also want to cater to those guests who are booking your place out for top dollar for long periods of time and very far in advance.
100%. Yeah. One of the main reasons that people buy property in Whistler is so that they can do nightly rentals, earn some income, but also use it themselves. So how does that fit into the mix when you're kind of instructing owners on how they should use the property and maybe when they should use it?
Well, the first question is, what are your goals to the owner? Sometimes it's, well, we just want to earn a little bit of revenue and cover our costs.
Yeah, maybe they just want to fill in the gaps.
Totally. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's, we're going to use it extremely minimally, and our sole purpose, just like mine was, is to have a revenue generating asset, and ROI is the most important thing. Okay, so from there, the conversation is, and it's not always a conversation either. Owners, sometimes they're going to buy a property and they're going to use it when they want to use it, and you know, that's okay. We have some owners who are going to use it a few months out of the year, but it's going to be in those downtimes, where it would perhaps, depending on the type of property, just be vacant anyways. Especially the higher end properties, the type of clientele that we're looking for, and the price point that we're at may not book in those slower seasons. So that's a good time for owners to really get use out of their home. And then we always discuss, well, when are the good times for you to come so that you're not sacrificing too much revenue? So it's really dependent and situational on an owner. And what works with their lifestyle. Generally, owners are not staying over Christmas. They're generally not staying over President's Week or Family Day weekend.
Yeah.
But again, it's really dependent on what they're looking for, because for some, they just don't care.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of my owners, they really they want to just use it when they want to use it. I mean, they have to come at President's Week because that's the only time they have. So that's fine. Then you just have to know that it's going to impact your revenue. And you know, not everyone can just only come in April or only come in December. So
yeah, and we make it really easy for our owners. We have every owner has an owner portal. They can just go in and book their nights off, and cleaning is automatically generated. Everything, the whole workflow, they have their check-in code.
Oh, cool.
And we make it really, really easy for them to use the property when they would like.
Yeah. Now, what about sort of last-minute bookings? You know, if someone's like, "Oh, I've got next weekend available. Can I come up?" And they just pop into their portal and take a look, or give you a call?
Yeah, totally. That's a really good question. Depends on how last minute. If we're talking a week out, then a lot of our owners, what they do, and a good strategy, especially if they're local and they have flexibility, is they'll come up and they'll look at the calendar. Oh, we have a couple nights gap coming up, and it's just a week away.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't book. We're gonna grab those dates.
Take it, yeah.
We're gonna take it. That way, if they're not booking super far in advance, they know that they're not giving up as much revenue.
Yeah.
They're potentially not blocking guests from who would be interested in a month-long stay. So that strategy works really well for owners who are looking to get enjoyment out of their property, have that flexibility, but don't want to give up too much revenue. So again, very situational based on the goals and the situation of the owner.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, questions that we get quite frequently, and I mean, these are obvious to me, but not necessarily when you're first looking at renting your property out in Whistler. What if the stove breaks? What if, David Lee Roth has a party and kicks a hole in my wall and throws the table out the window? So what are some of those solutions that you guys have?
Well, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We had a situation where there was a dishwasher that broke, and the owners in Key West, that is why they've hired us, is because we can respond on the spot immediately. We have our Rolodex of trades that can help us. We're there to mitigate any issues, if something like that could cause a fire or a flood. This is why we're here. So, we're always boots on the ground. There's always someone to respond immediately, depending on the nature and urgency of the issue. And that is pretty much one of the top reasons that we get hired, is really for that reason. We had owners who had just listed their home. We were just about to host our first guests. It was the 26th of December. These guests were paying top dollar. It's 2 p.m. We're inspecting the property. We had been there all week, and there's a leak. There's a leak. The ceiling's dripping in the bedroom. We're like, okay. So we responded immediately. We were in touch with the strata. They came right away. They found the source of the leak. They shut it off. And then they're going to be undergoing repairs in the spring, paid by the homeowner upstairs. Now, if this had been a self-managed property, the guests would have checked in. Maybe they wouldn't even have said it. I mean, they would have had to say something, but nobody would have known. We were proactive with the guests. We figured it out with them. We worked with them. And the owners were thrilled that they had someone there to respond to this so quickly. Because these are multi-million-dollar assets, and it's extremely important to have someone who's got their eyes on the property all the time. So whether it's a small thing like the blender breaking, or if it's a leak coming from upstairs, you need someone who's on top of it and who's working off checklists to make sure the home is in good condition. And there's other companies actually in Whistler that do handle this type of care for properties, and then not necessarily for nightly rental properties, but a friend of mine, Richard, has Alpine Home Care, and so if you just own a house in White Gold or somewhere that's not in rentals at all, they'll come over and take care of it and make sure that things haven't leaked. And this relates to insurance as well. Your homeowner insurance, if it's a second vacation home, isn't necessarily valid unless you've got some people coming in and checking almost every few days on the property. Yeah, it's a really, really good point. On one of the larger homes that we manage, detached, single family, especially in the winter, it's a major risk. Pipes burst all the time. And if something like that happens and nobody's checking on the property for a few weeks, it's again a major issue. Other tools that we use to mitigate any risk is moisture sensors, noise sensors, automatic water shut off. Those sort of things can really help ensure that we, not just us, has eyes and ears on the property, but also we have tools that are in place to alert us if anything funny is going on.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit is we were going to discuss sort of rental income and what can be expected, but it really does vary based on the type of property, whether it's a condo or a townhouse, or whether you're at Blackcomb or ski in, ski out, or whether you're at Creekside in a gondola village. So I don't think we'll get too much into the numbers, but the thing I wanted to just drill a little bit down to was when an owner looks at their statement, sometimes if you're a foreign owner, you're going to see withholding tax on there. And I'm just wondering if you can just explain a little bit about that. We're not accountants here, but let's just
totally not giving accounting advice, but if an owner is a non-resident of Canada for tax purposes, then they have a responsibility. Essentially, it's income tax. You pay income tax, I pay income tax. I pay income tax on the property that I own, on the bottom line, but the difference is that I'm paying my tax at the end of a year. Essentially, withholding tax for a non-resident of Canada for tax purposes is that they're paying that income tax in advance, and the responsibility is to remit that monthly.
And then it's just adjusted out based on actual figures when you file your taxes.
Yeah. So without getting into too gnarly of the details, the taxes are filed by the homeowner or the accountant, and then the true expenses and the true income are reported. It's compared to what's been remitted in terms of taxes throughout the year, and there may be an additional amount owed, or there may be a refund. So that all gets adjusted. Basically, it's income tax.
Yeah, and it's a good idea to have a local accountant here. So we really like BDO Dunwoody. There's a bunch of them, but they really do really well for non-residents owning here. So you have to have that piece of the puzzle in place as well.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that we get quite frequently is, what is the occupancy rate? And that's a really gray area. I know that back in the day when I started in the real estate business and selling nightly rental properties in 1999, Tourism Whistler would say that a good occupancy rate for the resort at least is like 55 to 60%. So we were like, yay, it was a 60% occupancy year. Now we're throwing numbers around that are like 70, 80%. So can you just speak to what can be expected?
Yep. And to that point, I think that the increase in overall occupancy throughout the year has to do with that we're much more of a summer destination now. There's even things to do in the slow seasons, the conferences. So Tourism has done a great job of really bolstering those occupancies outside of the winter.
Cornucopia.
Exactly. All these things, we've had lots of guests stay with us because they're here for conferences. So I think that's part of it. What you need to be really careful of when you're an investor, you're probably got a spreadsheet calculating, well, what's my average daily rate going to be and what's my occupancy going to be. It varies greatly throughout the year. Yeah. Winter, Christmas even is its own little season. The spring and the fall are slow season, and then the summer, which still does not compare to winter revenues.
Sure.
It varies greatly throughout the year.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at average occupancy and average daily rate, it's really important to have different seasons in mind and consider that it's going to vary greatly, and it's a little bit irrelevant to look at one figure for the entire year.
Yeah, important. Well, I think that wraps it up. Thanks very much for being with us, Christine. It was so nice to get to know you. And where can we find out a bit more about ZenAway?
There are lots of different ways to get in touch. If you're interested in learning a bit more about us and our rental program, our website, ZenAwayWhistler.com. You can get in touch through social. You can call the phone number on our website. You can email us. So you can ask for Dean for my cell phone number. There are no lack of options to get in touch.
Okay, well, we'll link everything up in the description below. And once again, thanks so much for being with us, and have a great day.
Thanks, Dean. It was great to talk with you.